Okay, so it looks like we're at about noon. My name is John Boswell, the Associate Athletic Director for Marketing and Promotions here at UMass Lowell. And thank you to all of you who are joining us today for our second edition of Chat with a Coach. We're joined today by Associate Head Coach Andrew Jones and Robert Ellis, the voice of the Riverhawks, to be our MC, as we have him pinned as the main video right now. Similar to last week, we'll leave everybody muted. If you do have a question, feel free to put that into the Zoom group chat. Bob will redirect those to Coach Jones as we go. If anything comes up, feel free to drop that there. We are recording, so if you do have to drop out, we will send a recording of this to everybody who's registered, and you'll be able to see any questions that you might have missed as we go. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Ellis, the voice of the Riverhawks, to get us started today.
Thank you very much, John, and good afternoon and welcome. This is the second in a series of conversations with the coach today, featuring UMass Lowell Hockey Associate Head Coach Andy Jones. I will say it is an effort to stay in contact with those who are our most passionate supporters, stay in contact, keep the channels of communications open, and remind everybody that while we're under, dare I say, house arrest, there is still a great deal that does go on. I hope this gathering finds you healthy, happy, safe. We are all in this together. We will all get through this together. Now, as to our guest, Andy Jones, he has been a part of the coaching staff for 5 now, headed on 6 years, heavily involved in really all aspects of the hockey program. Things that we will focus on today will include his work with defensemen, his work with the penalty killing unit, as well as recruiting. I will note that Andy played his college hockey at Amherst College. I think he also played baseball there, and will lead at least to one question I have later on. That said, let's turn things over to Andy Jones. Coach?
Well, thanks, everyone. Certainly appreciate you joining us today, and a definite shout out to all of you for your continued support of the program. It's good to see so many faces up there and so many people joining a chat like this. And a special thanks to the communications and marketing department for finding different ways to provide different content so that we can reach out to you and stay in touch with you when we can't see each other in person. With that being said, thanks again for joining us. And a couple things that we wanted to touch on today were the defensive group, the penalty kill, and I'll touch a little bit on recruiting. And I also want to talk with Bob about the end of season awards. We give those out usually at a team banquet at the end of the year. This year we were not afforded the opportunity to have one of those banquets. So we had to give those awards out virtually. And I know they were announced on the website, but it's also a good opportunity here in a conversation like this to talk through why those awards, and maybe a little bit of history about the awards. And most importantly, I would like to chat a little bit about the people, because while our fans are awesome, the majority of the time you see our players with cages and masks on, and there's humans beneath those helmets, and they're pretty cool guys, and they're pretty cool to get to know. And I really enjoy talking X's and O's, but I like talking about people more. So any questions that we have in that regard would be fantastic. Bob, why don't we get started in that realm? Talk a little bit about Coach wrapped up the season very well last week. Maybe we can chat a little bit about some individuals and some recognition they received.
A good place to start then is the awards. And obviously, at least one of the awards, the Harvey Chandler Award, is one that is based simply on statistics, not on a vote. And I thought that, being an obvious award, might be a place to start. Freshman Matt Brown was our scoring leader, thus the recipient of the Harvey Chandler Award. Talk to me about, from a coach's perspective, what you see with the youngsters such as Mr. Brown.
Matt Brown will certainly put a smile on your face, and he'll tire you out if you let him. He likes hockey as much as anybody I've ever come across. He would spend 6 to 8 hours on the ice after practice every day if we allowed him to, which we don't. But Matt also, like, while his passion for the game is almost unrivaled, maybe while he had a great year for us, maybe everyone doesn't know how he arrived into Lowell. Matt spent 3 years playing junior hockey at three different levels, and he climbed the ladder in a very slow, productive way. He spent a year in the Eastern Hockey League, had a very productive season there. His second year in junior hockey, he was in the North American League, put up a lot of points, was a very, very dangerous player in the South Division. And then the year before he arrived at Lowell, he spent some time in the top league, the USHL, and he had an outstanding year for the Des Moines Buccaneers. A really good ladder of development story. He showed up ready to go. And again, from just like a coaching enjoyment standpoint, it's always nice to be around guys that love the game, that have an insatiable passion for it, because they make your job enjoyable and they make it really easy. So Matt, he'll tire you out though. Like, he is just relentless in how much time he wants to spend talking about hockey. Sometimes I feel like I have to give him a couple of books just so he can do something else.
When a player such as Matt Brown's being recruited, you can certainly see the talent on the ice. Do you see the passion, those other things that you talked about that aren't something that we can define with statistics?
Passion can be seen through watching, I think, how hard they play the game. But I think sometimes as recruiters, we don't always have access to practice or practice habits. And so in those cases, you have to rely on those that are closest to the individual, meaning their coaches, their advisors, their family, because they see that person every day. So we see them perform in a hockey game, which is 60 minutes long. And you can see how hard they try and how hard they play. But some of the things that Matt brings to the table, really good offensive vision, really good ability to move to open space, a very creative offensive mind. Those things you can notice those things throughout the course of a game. Some of the other things about the wanting to spend hours after the practice every day, you don't always see those things, but we kind of had an idea what we were getting. We're certainly glad he's with us.
I would note one in the group, John, says that Matt reminds him of one of his favorite non-goalies, Joe Gambardella. His motor never seems to quit. Does that sound like a good comparison?
Well, it's a lofty comparison. I mean, I think if I was Matt, I would be pretty excited to be put in the same realm as Joe. Joe, by the time he was a senior, he was at times an unstoppable force and a very, very unique, maybe the most Lowell-ish player that's ever put on the uniform in my 6 years or in my 5 years here. But the question, I think, specifically addressed Matt's motor. And while Gambo's motor was pretty remarkable, that Matt does have a similar trait in that his feet are always going. And he's got short little choppy strides, which doesn't matter because his feet are just faster than everybody else's. And one thing we're working on with Matt is his feet seem to move really fast going one way up the ice, and we're trying to get him to move fast, just as fast coming back in the other direction. I'm sure he'll appreciate that comment as we try to make him a more rounded player. But Matt's an awesome kid. He wants to learn, and his motor is something. He's always going.
From longtime supporter John Kennedy, he writes and says, "How would a kid like Brown get missed by so many other teams?"
Well, he was found by us, John. So, John, thanks for your continued support. We certainly appreciate it. It's awesome. I'm not sure. We were in a recruiting battle with Matt. We won that recruiting battle. We don't always win. We don't always win the recruiting battles we get into. But I think when he was committed, he was a relatively known commodity only in the East. And so our recruiting battle was concentrated within some Eastern schools and primarily within our league. The other thing I'll say is that by the time Matt really popped onto the scene and became, maybe a top 10 scorer in the USHL, he had been committed for some time and we had a strong relationship with him. And, Matt's one thing I'll say about Matt is he's always been pretty excited to come to Lowell and wear the jersey. So we appreciate that about Matt. And I hope that answers your question a little bit, John. I don't know how many teams missed on him. There just weren't as many teams involved in the process that early.
I know we're getting some questions about recruiting, and I will hold those for a little bit. I want to keep with the awards here. And while Matt Brown was a freshman, he wasn't the only freshman to win an award. The Rookie of the Year award went to Carl Berglund. Your thoughts on Carl?
Carl's a terrifically well-rounded young man. You might not come across a calmer, more composed, I don't know, 19-year-old in some time. He looks calm and composed on the ice, and I can tell you he's as calm and composed off the ice 24 hours a day. That's the one unique trait about Carl. He never really seems as though he's under duress. And when you talk to him, I think that's one of the things that's really enjoyable about spending time with Carl is he's really comfortable in his own skin. He's calm, he's composed, he's very easy to speak to. It's like speaking with an adult. And he comes from an awesome family, and that usually matters as well. That's what I can tell you about Carl. He had a terrific freshman year, well deserving of the award, and I think his future is very bright.
Also under the heading of awards, I want to get to Colin O'Neill. He's a senior. He was honored as the Billy Riley Unsung Player Award. He also was honored with the Gus Kuchu Award. Colin O'Neill, we've talked to, he's never made headlines as being a big goal scorer, certainly plays both ends of the ice. An award recipient, the only Riverhawk this year to be honored in two different categories. What stands out about Colin O'Neill?
Well deserved that he's honored in two different categories. What stands out about Colin is the fact that he's an everyday guy. And I mean every day. He's got energy, he has passion, and he's consistent. The award that Colin won that exemplifies like what the spirit of UMass Lowell hockey and what it means to be a Lowell man. He's a really good example of that, in that he rarely gets outworked. And he's very, very consistent with his effort. No, Colin did not receive the most accolades. He did not show up on the score sheet the most, but he's the type of a guy that under the radar is essential to have a strong foundation and a strong program. His contributions over 4 years, not just this season, were incredibly invaluable. And we're going to miss him dearly, because though sometimes the goals are hard to come by, but sometimes the consistency and the fabric and the substance that someone like Colin provides is surprisingly hard to replace. And he's made us a better team for 4 years. He's made our program better for 4 years, and we certainly appreciate that every ounce of hard work and sweat that he gave us.
Under the heading of Best Defensive Player, the award went to John McDonald, just a sophomore defenseman on what is a very young defensive core, but McDonald honored as the Best Defensive Player. What stands out about him?
John's skating. I think I can speak to the fans when that would be the thing that would stand out the most to them. John has a glide that would allow him to play 30 to 35 minutes every night. And that's it. He's got special feet. He's got special glide. John, all these awards are voted on by the team. John is well deserving of this award. I thought the defensive group took significant strides this year. It's young, it's promising. I really, 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 really like the group. So for John to win this award is significant. I think John, he's fiercely competitive. He wants to be a player. He comes from a terrific, well-rounded family. John is very intrinsically motivated. So John, he appreciates a pat on the back, and it means a lot to him, but it's not prodding him along. John's got a plan. He knows how to arrive at where he wants to go, and the only thing he needs is a little bit of guidance here and there. That is the one thing I enjoy about John the most is he's a really, really proud young man, and he has a plan of where he wants to get to, and I think he's going to get there.
Sticking with the awards, I'm going to spotlight a guy that I really like. You can never look at stats, but I love this first pass out of the defensive zone. The Coach's Perseverance Award went to Nolan Sawchuk, a guy that I've just thought is a terrific hockey player who somehow remains under the radar. But anyway, the Coach's Perseverance Award, Nolan Sawchuk. Tell me a little bit about the things that the coaching staff likes about Nolan.
Well, you can probably tell by the smile on my face that Nolan's one of the guys that he just instantly puts a smile on your face. He's a special young man. I actually spent an hour on the phone with him this morning just talking about his season and his recovery and how he's doing and his plans for in the long term here for the next weeks and months. Nolan's goal is to play a season next year injury-free. And I would be the first to tell you that he deserves it. Prior to arriving at Lowell, in the summer leading into his freshman year, he had double hip surgery. I think it's pretty common for a person to have one hip surgery in an off season, not two. We did not expect him to play his freshman year, and he was ready to go by Christmas time. I apologize. Probably even before that, my memory already is already poor. But Nolan is also an everyday guy. He will definitely get the most out of his talent. He's a tireless worker. And Nolan's a heart and soul fabric guy. So, Bob, you can say you like his first pass. It's really good. His feet are really good. His defensive instincts are really good. And I mean, really good. But none of that kind of stuff pales in comparison to like the quality of a teammate and human being he is. Like, the kid's awesome. Like, he's an everyday guy. He puts more, because of his hip surgery, he's put more time into recovery and preparation than anyone on our team. And that's not selling anyone else short, but it takes him a long time to get ready every day because he's stiff and those things take time to come back from. So he deserves, and he's earned a lot of respect for the effort he puts in. As far as the Perseverance Award, maybe the award was given out this year because of what he's been through over the course of 2 years. But I would also say it's primarily focused on what happened to him this year. He had a little bit of a fluke injury on the ice. No one gets hit every game. But this was a random event that took place, and he suffered a really unfortunate injury. I'm sure everyone would be happy to know that he's feeling great. He's recovering well. That's the most important thing. He's having another killer semester academically. He's a really, really bright, motivated student. But as far as the award goes, Nolan kept showing up to the rink. He kept supporting his teammates. He watched video with the coaches. He couldn't get enough. We had to kick him out of the rink. And he also never complained, ever. He never complains. And that stuff goes a long way because it rubs off on others. And we certainly love having Nolan around. Makes our program better.
I was going to say, in the process, you have answered Michael M.'s question, who asked how Nolan's recovery is going. I want to move on to the Mark Connolly Award. Yeah, we're going to get to the MVP Award in a moment. I want to get, though, at this point to the Mark Connolly Award, which went to the Director of Hockey Operations, Chase Fuchs. He's someone that I think the public may not be aware of, but his contributions are numerous. And again, I believe the Mark Connolly Award is one of those awards, Andy, that is voted on by the players.
Yeah, it's voted on by the players, and you know, it's one of the goals of it is to recognize someone that doesn't get as much limelight, but puts in a lot of work and has a huge impact in the program. Chase is certainly a deserving recipient this year. I actually have a long history with Chase. I spent 4 years as an assistant coach at Clarkson, and I coached Chase there. He was a defenseman on the hockey team. And the one thing I knew coming into this season about Chase is it's hard to outwork him. Chase has taken a pretty unique path in his coaching career. He was a remarkably strong business student at Clarkson, to the point where he was awarded the best job in the senior class with a financial institution. He turned it down to pursue a coaching career. He moved to Alberta to start his coaching career there. Then he moved to Michigan, spent some time in Illinois in the USHL. So he's put in some time, and he as far as the Director of Hockey Operations, he did a lot of work with logistics. He did a lot of work with video. But I think if I could get inside the players' heads, one of the reasons why they recognize him this year is because they could tell right away that he cared, and he cared about their experience. He cared about making their experience better, and he did. And he really just primarily did that by investing a heck of a lot of time. He watched a lot of video with guys. Um, our road trips, or the detail on our road trips was outstanding, and the guys certainly wanted to recognize him for the significant effort and time that he put into making it a strong season.
All right, at this point, let's get to the most valuable player. That was Tyler Wall. He was a Hockey East third team All-Star. He was one of the 10 finalists for the Mike Richter Award, and we got the honor and pleasure of seeing him just about every single night. Most valuable player, I guess there's not a lot of question about it, but I would suspect it's more than just being a good goaltender that's involved here.
Sure. Most valuable player, some people look at that award and think it can mean different things, and that's true. I think for our team, it was pretty unanimous this season. Our best player was Tyler by a mile. He was our most valuable player, and I got a lot of passion when I talk about Tyler. There's a couple things I want to emphasize to the fans out there that I think they do realize. It might not even be the most positive comment with regards to our team. Really liked our team this year. We got better as the year went on, but there was also a couple situations, whether it was at BU when we gave up a couple 6-on-3, 5-on-3 goals, or Merrimack at home when we kind of had some poor penalties late and they piled on some 6-on-3 goals. You take away a couple situations, poor situations that we put Tyler in as a team, his numbers are even better. And I can tell you that I was here for Kevin Boyle's Hockey East MVP Player of the Year season, and I think Tyler was as good here. He was every bit as good. He was every bit as valuable, and he's left us. Not only did he win us a championship his freshman year, but he left us in a lot better spot by the momentum he helped provide for our program this year because he was so good. But I know you all see that. Like his season was outstanding. As far as the progression of Tyler as a young man and as a leader, I think it's really unique. He came here as an engineering student. He's going to graduate with an engineering degree on time. Not easy to do, by the way. Outstanding engineering student, and he's always put in the time to excel in that arena. Tyler's is a really, really laid back, easygoing kind of guy. It's one of the reasons why he's so beloved by his teammates. But his approach has also gotten to the point, especially this year, where it was so professional, so consistent, and he battled his butt off every day in practice. And he set a terrific example for Logan Neaton, who is going to be one of our returning goalies next year. And Logan, I know he would tell you, he will be much better next year, having had the opportunity to watch Tyler for a year and learn about not only how he performed, but how he approach things day to day. We talked to Logan earlier in the season, and Logan's a really sharp young man. And he made a comment to us. He said, one of my goals this year, because I might not be playing this much, is just to watch Tyler every day. And if he watched Tyler, he learned a lot, and that's a big credit to Tyler.
Right, and at this point, we've gotten a number of questions about recruiting. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've run through all of the awards. So I want to shift gears to recruiting, but rather than me asking questions, I'm going to let you know what some of those in the audience have sent in. I'm going to combine a couple here that really deal with similar things. Steve D. Simone says, at what age does UMass Lowell start looking at recruits? And from Jim Tiarano, he says, when does a player get on your recruiting radar? High school and prep age, or is it when a player reaches the junior level?
Sure. I think the answers kind of combine those questions because they're kind of dancing around the same topic. I think players can arrive on our coaching staff's radar screen at different times in their careers. How young will we begin to watch players? We'll begin to become aware of them when they're 14, 15, 16 years old. That doesn't mean we're allowed to do any recruiting or recruiting of the prospect and we don't, but we become aware of good young players at the same time other programs do. There's guys that are really good when they're 14 and 15 and 16, and sometimes they're bypassed when they're 17 or 18 by young men that are a little bit more late developers. So sometimes we do become aware of players when they enter their junior career. It all just depends. And the one thing about recruiting for college hockey is you have to have your eye on so many different levels. You have to have your eye on the prep level, the high school level, the junior level, the midget level. Obviously, we've had some international players in our program, so you have to have your eye on junior and youth levels over there to understand some and have a feel for the guys that might want to come to the U.S. to go to college. So it can depend. We have guys on our roster right now that we knew about when they were 15, and we have guys on our roster right now that we didn't learn about until they were 19 or 20.
John Kennedy asks, and you mentioned recruiting and sometimes going overseas. He asks, as the program's had great success with players from Scandinavia, how do you maintain such a connection? And then another question asks specifically about the recruiting of Andre Lee and how we found him. So I don't know if I think those questions work well together, so I'll let you take it from there.
Sure. The international recruiting, it's across the ocean in some ways. It's not that different than recruiting in North America. You have to have a strong network of people that you trust, and coaches and agents and advisors in all different parts of the world. And it's in conversations with those guys and through watching video that you can learn about people. The program here has had has had success with international players, and one of the reasons that that's happened is we just put an effort into maintaining a presence there physically. We talk to advisors and coaches over there on a regular basis, and I also think it's important to note that word spreads. So I believe that we've had some international Scandinavian players specifically that have had good experiences here, and I don't think we'd be getting additional ones if they did not have good experiences and didn't develop here. So I think that's important to note as well when it comes to maintaining a pipeline, whether it's in New Jersey or Sweden. Andre and Carl Berglund were actually recruited at the same time. They were found on the same recruiting trip, and they visited Lowell together in the summer with their families. And they came over here to attend a camp and to learn a little bit about the U.S. college system. I think we were the first school to dive into them deeply in their junior career over there. We watched them enough to feel as though they were both really good prospects, and we made them offers. We made them scholarship offers, and they committed. Andre's unique in that he has an American father and a Swedish mother, so he's always been a dual citizen. So Andre's his ability to adapt to the culture has been pretty good. He spent a full year in Sioux Falls in the USHL prior to arriving in Lowell, but his English was really good, and his feel for American culture and food and all those things was already strong. And I think that stuff matters, because when you come to a new culture and you're expected to perform right away, there's a lot of things you have to overcome. And one of the reasons why that year is beneficial is because in the year in Sioux Falls, Andre got injured, he got sick. All these things that sometimes tend to happen when you show up in a new place, and he kind of got some of those out of the way before he arrived at Lowell, and we benefited from that this year. The other thing I'll mention about Andre is he's got an infectious smile. He's really, really fun to be around. He makes you laugh every day, and he's got a ton of energy. And I think Andre's got a passion for the game that will allow him to reach some pretty unique heights. He's a pretty unique talent, and we're really fortunate to have him.
All right, moving on. We've got another question, again, dealing with recruiting. This one from Linda Yetz says, how do you try to differentiate the Lowell program in your recruiting efforts when you are in a competitive scenario with other schools for a particular individual player?
Great question. Depends on the schools that you're in competition with. One thing I think that it's important to remind yourself of when it comes to differentiation is you can never downplay your strengths, or try to frame yourself as a university or as a program as something that you're not. I think that holds true for everybody as people. But I think in the recruiting process, we'll mention some things about player development and some players maybe that were off the radar at Lowell that turned into significant professional prospects. So we do try to emphasize the development aspect here. Goaltending, for one, we have a trend of goalies being really good, so we'll speak to that. So we spend a lot of time trying to differentiate ourselves from a development aspect. Another thing that really works to our advantage is the Songus Arena. It's a beautiful arena, it's a beautiful venue, and it's usually filled with awesome fans. So that's one thing that attracts a lot of quality players. They want to play in that type of atmosphere. They want to play and practice in that rink every day. And that's a differentiating factor for us as well.
Shifting gears a little bit here, you had mentioned earlier your time as part of the coaching staff at Clarkson, and you've coached in various places. And Peter asks, Andy, what does Norm, or what makes Norm different from other coaches that you have worked with? What are some of the qualities that make him so successful as a head coach?
Sure, that's a great question. One thing that sticks out to you about Norm right away is that I think as a leader, Norm has a pretty good long-term vision for the program and what he wants it to stand for. That would be the biggest separating factor for me, is how he wants our players to act and behave, and what he wants them to understand about what Lowell represents and how he wants our team to be a byproduct of the city. I'm not sure that there's any coach in the country who's done a better job of that. I think our guys understand what it means to be a Lowell man, what it means to represent this hardworking city. And I actually think, I can't speak for our season ticket base, but I think they show up every night and they want us to win every night, but they kind of expect us to work harder than the other team every night. And I think over the course of his time here, Norm's teams have been really, really successful in doing that. And I think whatever you pay attention to grows. And Norm spends a lot of time with our group, having them understand the history of Lowell, what it means to, what the city has meant, what it stands for, and how he wants us to be a byproduct of that. The other thing I'll mention, as far as communication with the players, Norm's pretty to the point. And so I think a lot of times guys have a clear understanding of what his expectations of them are, and what they need to do to either earn more playing time or to achieve a different goal that they're looking to achieve. So I think he's clear. I think he's concise. But the biggest differentiating factor, I think, is just his stewardship of the program. I think that part of that pride comes from the fact that he has 2 degrees from UMass Lowell. He's a Lowell person at his heart. He always will be. And I think he's a really good representative of the school. And I think the guys understand that too. They understand that he has a tremendous pride as an alum, and he wants the program to succeed at the highest level. He communicates that better than anyone I've been around.
I will throw one more recruiting question at you, and then I want to change gears. But from John Krumloff, says, the Riverhawks seem to have great success at recruiting hardworking, quote, salt of the earth, quote, lunch pail players. I understand how you can see talent, he writes, or potential, but how do you find so many of these Lowell-type guys?
Good question. I think we're always on the lookout for that. I think part of that is how I answered the previous question. You know, Norm is he's clear with the players, but he's pretty clear with his staff too. So he's made it very clear to us that he wants the most talented players in the program. But talent is not everything. It's a lot of things, and he wants the guys that really, really want to work, and they want to wear the Lowell sweater. So do we always know that? No, but we go an extra length in the recruiting process to figure out the type of players that might be a good fit for our head coach. Norm relates to those kind of players really well. Those kind of players seem to thrive in our culture. And I think some of the players that don't have as much of that get more of build more of those traits the longer they're in our program. So I think it kind of all those things blend together. I think it's kind of from the top down from Norm in terms of what he's looking for. That's clear to Giuliano and myself. But it's just also, again, what you pay attention to grows, and Norm emphasizes all the time that he wants a hardworking team. He wants a hardworking program that the school and the fans can be proud of. And I think our guys appreciate that and they take it to heart. But we do in the recruiting process, and it's not only the fans recognize that, but I think a lot of people out there in the hockey world recognize that too. And sometimes we're talking to agents and coaches and advisors, and they'll tell us, I think this is a Lowell type kid. They'll say, I think he's got a lot of hardworking traits that some previous players that have had success in your program that have had. And we'll take note of that. Doesn't mean we're going to take them, but we're always on the lookout for it. And I think that's why we maybe have a few more than most.
I promised earlier that at some point we would get into the penalty killing aspect and your work with the penalty killing unit. Nick, and I hope I pronounced his last name correctly, but Nick Langerand says, I know we're going to get into the penalty kill in a bit here, but regarding that aspect, can you speak a bit about the X's and O's of the 1-2-2 or diamond shape you use? Also, what power play formation would make you change your shape to adjust to your opponent on a given weekend?
Sure, great question. We haven't talked much about X's and O's. The best penalty killing system is to have a really good goalie. And I'm not trying to be facetious, but that's the most important thing. This year we did, and our penalty kill was above average as a result of that. Like anything in life and in hockey, I think you have some core principles. We have some core principles on the penalty kill about where to position ourselves and some lanes that we need to occupy and some space that we need to take away, and where a dangerous shot is and where a dangerous shot is not. And then we adhere to those core principles all the time. If you're looking for, I'm not big into like how to define things all the time, but if you're looking to define our penalty kill, I would define it as a lane-based penalty kill. So we're always trying to be in passing and shooting lanes. Seems obvious, but different types of kills are not trying to do the same thing. So we're a lane-based kill that prides itself in letting the goalie see as many pucks as possible. And those are the foundational aspects of the kill. From there, intangible things always matter, like shot blocks, maybe a couple big saves, a forecheck, so we're not in our zone as much of the time. However, when it comes to other teams look to take advantage of certain things. Other teams have certain strengths on their power play. So we will go into certain games and certain weekends looking to limit certain player touches, looking to limit where a certain player can get the puck and where a certain player can shoot the puck from, and maybe trying to look to limit the damage that a certain player or maybe a couple players can do. I'll give you one example. Maybe a team is running an umbrella power play where there's one defenseman at the top and a couple guys off to the side. Maybe that defenseman is a really good distributor of the puck, but he never really looks to shoot. So we'll try to understand and relay those tendencies to the players, and maybe that has an effect on how we play. Maybe we lay off that player a little bit more, understanding that his natural instinct is not to shoot but to pass. That means we can play a little further away from him, and that'd be one example of how we adjust a few X's and O's with respect to the opponent.
Okay, and you have, I think, unless you want to add to it, I think you've answered a question as well from John Kennedy, who says, Andy, could you say a little bit about how you prepare the penalty kill versus individual programs? I think you've answered that, so I'll move on to Sandra's question, which deals with, I guess, the balance between athletics and academics. She says, not only do your players excel on the ice, but have led athletics on the academic side as well. How do players balance all of this?
Great question. I don't think it's easy to balance a Division I hockey schedule and having a full academic course load. Our players seem to do a really good job of it. I think most of the credit goes to them. I do think Norm has an expectation within the program. He never talks about grade point average or grades or anything like that. But I think he makes it pretty clear to the guys, and the team understands that he expects a certain level of effort and a certain level of achievement. That can mean different things for different players, for different student athletes, but he expects effort just like he does on the ice. Our guys understand that, so that's a built-in expectation. Most of the credit goes to the individuals for the effort they put in, whether it's establishing relationships with the professors, and just working together in groups. There's a lot of group work that goes into the college and the business courses now. So a lot of the credit goes to that. I think it's also a really good time to give a shout out to the support staff. And, we have our coaching staff is aware of all the classes the players are in. We're aware of when there might be more tests throughout the course of a semester. However, administratively, Allison Quant Westgate is an associate athletic director in charge of academic and student services, and she's primarily responsible for our team and our ability to access the classes they need for their majors, access the timing of the classes that they need to be able to practice when we practice. And she just has a terrific pulse on our players as individuals, what their goals and dreams are academically, and she cares. She cares a lot. She cares about their achievement, and she puts in a tremendous amount of time. And I think it's really aided our program and aided our players. And I know they're incredibly indebted to her for that.
Let me add into kind of my own 2 cents on this, in that I travel with the team. And one may think when teams are on the road, it's all fun and games. I've watched this team travel and sat next to players on airplanes who are on their computer doing schoolwork, and watched them in hotels do schoolwork. And they are, as a group, they seem rather committed to the academic side, not just the hockey side. Now, you, Andy, had mentioned Tyler Wall, a mechanical engineering major who's been a terrific student. You mentioned earlier Nolan Sawchuk, who I think is majoring in mathematics and is a terrific student. I've got to think that the example that they set sends a message to their teammates. You talked about Logan Neaton watching everything that Tyler Wall does. I suspect that he sees him working on his engineering classes and things like that. I get the feeling around the team that there is some peer pressure to make sure, not just pressure from the coaching staff or from parents or whatever, but I get the feeling there's a peer pressure to uphold a certain academic standard.
Yeah, peer pressure and group pressure. Again, I'm not as into statistics and numbers as maybe most coaches are. But I think group pressure wise, we seem to have a really, really strong grade point average. And let's call a spade a spade. We're dealing with competitive student athletes here, so they know what it is. And I think they want to maintain that or improve on that all the time. So I'll give our guys credit for that. Peer pressure, yeah, I think we're also always searching for pretty good people. We're looking for good players, but good people too. And part of being a good person is just wanting to achieve in all aspects of their life. And I think our guys want to be good students. I think they want to have a good degree. And so when you have guys like Tyler and O'Neill setting an example like that, I think it goes a long ways. I got to be a little careful here because I'm certainly going to be leaving some people out, but it goes further than that. I mean, we have some tremendous students in the business program, in various other programs that I think are setting a good example for the team, but I also think that they're setting a good example and representing the program really well across the university. I think that's important to mention too, because I think our guys, they wave the flag really well, and I think it's important in terms of to have respect across campus.
All right. I was going to say to people, we're going to wrap this up shortly. So if you have any quick questions you want to get in, please send them along. I will note, Andy, we talked about your work with defensemen. I just wanted to ask, that had to be fun and an interesting challenge at the same time, in that there were no seniors. There was one junior, and the rest of the defense corps were sophomores and freshmen. That had to be fun, but it also had to be challenging.
Challenging, nerve-wracking. Not as nerve-wracking as last year, I can tell you that. I'm not sure I want to go through another year as the college coach with 5 freshman defensemen again. However, I will give those guys a ton of credit because they did a really good job. We also had Abney Barisha and Matthias Goranson as upperclassmen, and they did a really good job helping everyone along too. But much like you could probably sense my passion when I talked about Tyler Wall, I think I have a lot of passion when it comes to the promise of our defensive group and the strides that they've made so far. It's young, it's talented, it's got a tremendous mix of hard workers, of talented offensive types of guys. And I think, just like when you're trying to make any kind of cake, you need to have all the right ingredients, and I think we have them. And I think next year we have enough intrinsically motivated guys that want to continue to improve. I'm really encouraged by the product you might see on the ice from the defensive group next year. It's going to be deep. It's going to be competitive. It's going to be hard to earn playing time, and we have all the right ingredients to be a successful group.
All right. Getting close to wrapping it up, I had said at the outset that I believed you played 2 sports in college, playing baseball as well as hockey. Is the day and age of the 2-sport athlete at a collegiate level a thing of the past?
Yeah, more or less. You're going to see story. I know this is a Bob Ellis question because he spends a lot of time talking to me about baseball. It's a passion of both of ours. But if he's going to moderate these things, he gets to have a question too, I guess. I don't think you're going to see as much of it moving forward. There's a little bit too much of a focus, even from a young age, in specializing in everything. Our society is moving towards specialists in everything, and that's fine. But it's nice to be well-rounded too. It's nice to be a well-rounded person, and there's just not as many programs and not as many college schedules that really allow for that type of thing anymore. For me, it was good. It was really good. It was a lot of fun. And most importantly, it was really good for me academically because I never had any downtime. And when I never had any downtime, that's when I was the best student. So,
all right.
In that regard.
I'll throw in a final question here from John Kennedy. He says, speaking of defense, when you play other teams with serious scores, John Leonard as an example, how do you target them, or do you do something special to defend them?
Well, I don't know. John Leonard, that would be a tough one right now because he's certainly top of mind based on how he performed against us at the end of the year. But I will also mention in our defense how he performed against everybody towards the end of the year. He was in a stretch there where he was close to unstoppable. Really good players, we try to make sure that we're bumping them as much as possible. So big hits are nice, but even impeding someone's progress and just getting little bits of physical contact on them is really important, especially the good skaters, because it stops their progress, it stops their momentum, and it makes them work harder. But then also I will say the really, really good ones, sometimes you're just trying to minimize their impact. If they're on the ice 25, 22, 28 minutes a game, maybe 30 minutes a game like Dave Ferentz from BU, you're not going to just completely eliminate their impact, but the more you can do to minimize it, the better off you're going to be. And some of the things that I just mentioned are ways you can try to do that.
All right. Andy, I once asked Norm in our 90 seconds with Norm for one word to describe you. He said cerebral. I don't know how you like that or not, but give me one word to describe Norm.
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind the term. I think it's a compliment. One word to describe Norm would be professional. I think he's professional in his approach every day. I think it comes from his upbringing and his background. He's just a really, really hard worker. He treats every day the same, and he has a really professional approach to everything. And I think that's one thing that's embedded into our program because of that.
All right, and I will close this out by thanking everybody who joined us and thanking you specifically, Andy, and congratulations on a new arrival at home as well. And I would say, to quote Terrence McMahon, who says, "Great job, Coach. Impressive work by you and the team."
Thanks, Bob. Thanks to Boz for setting these things up. I think it's a really good way to communicate with the fan base. And just another big thank you to everyone that tuned in today or that watches on tape delay later. Continued a big thank you for all your support. We really appreciate it. The players appreciate it, and it means a lot, and it goes a long way.
Thank you, Andy. And again, we will be doing this on a regular basis. Giuliano Pagliaro will join us next Friday. We hope that you as well will join us, and there will be other coaches as we continue this process in the days and weeks ahead. I will say again, stay home, stay safe, stay healthy. We're all in this together. We're all going to get through this together. Have yourself a good day and a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.